well. So is there not some concern that the unemployment levels for ladies are rising and for women are rising, and that's a trend that we have to show concern for and has to be expressed here tonight in this House?
Well, that of course is the concern, because ironically we are having this debate when the spectre of mass unemployment, or as the Liberal benches will remember, the giant evil of idleness, again to quote William Beveridge, rears its ugly head, and yet here we are accelerating the age at which people will get their retirement pension. I think I will, and then I'll try to reach my conclusion.
It's very generous. I mean, the geographical variation can be extremely gross if one adds in people who are economically inactive, and the proportion of people who are economically inactive varies from place to place, with Merthyr Tydfil being the obvious one in Wales. If one adds that in, the contrast between, say, Witney as a constituency, which the last time I looked at 3 people who are economically inactive searching for a job, and they're on there where the number is 154. I mean, that is a gross variation, in fact. It's not something to be disregarded.
It's an extraordinary variation, and one of the implications of that is that in order to make good policy and good practice in the field of pensions, as indeed other things, this Parliament, among those of us on its benches, including, I'm bound to say, that bench there, needs to have some understanding of how people work, and not just think of their own particular circumstances. And I will, and then I really must.
The point he's making is a powerful point in the current economic circumstances, but of course we don't know what the employment circumstances may be in 2016, 2020. Would he not agree that the more essential point in this debate is that, since people look upon their pension and investment in their pension as a long-term decision, that it's the short-term way in which this has been done which introduces the unfairness in all of this, that people who had a certain expectation, that made contributions, and the benefit from those contributions is now being denied them.
Yes. And hence my introduction, where I was arguing that pension policy in this country has always been at its best when it goes with the grain of how people live, and where it makes long-term decisions that individuals can plan around, and it is the acceleration in the sense that we are now discussing. And it's extraordinary to me that the Conservative benches, and I suppose I have to say the Liberal benches, having taken so much money out of the pension system, now want to get credit for putting some money back into the system. That's a bit of Tory arithmetic which I'm not terribly impressed by. Happy to give way.
Not welcome, as I do, the additional £25 billion that's actually going into the triple lock of the state pension, and is, as of today, going to protect pensioners from the rise in inflation.
Subject for another day, perhaps, although colleagues might want to touch on it today, Madam Deputy Speaker, as to how the shift from RPI to CPI is going to affect the real value of pensions in the future. My guess is that shift, which seems very technical and very dry, will actually become the big pension swindle of the 21st century. And I think I would therefore not be quite so impressed by the triple lock as the Loyalist lady is, but I'll give her another chance.
Would the right honourable gentleman not acknowledge that his proposal was to uprate the state pension in line with average earnings, which is 1.8%, whereas the triple lock really chooses the best of the three, and is actually an incredibly important reinforcement of the strength of our state pension.
That's right. Yes, but I hope she will consider my point about CPI and RBI and look at that. Indeed. Because we are talking about billions of pounds there that could be lost to British pensioners when that is implemented over the coming decades. Can I reach my conclusion and say this, that we suffer from overgeneralisations in this field. And I'm fed up with macho commentators, Madam Deputy Speaker, often from the political and professional and business class, that somehow assume that everyone is going to live to a ripe old age, and that somehow in their 60s there will be all sorts of portfolios of opportunities that they can get. A directorship here, writing a book here, a television programme here. Many people, and not least on the opposite benches, talk about a world of that kind. Now, of course it is the case. I don't want to get the lady overexcited. She's had many chances to respond, but she knows who I'm talking about. Of course it is the case that in the life cycles that are now typical in the late 20th and early 21st century, more and more of us, more and more of our children and our grandchildren, will actually not effectively get started in their careers until their early 20s or even mid-20s. With the rise of university education, many working patterns will be of that kind. No, I won't, because I want to make this point. But the point being that that is not at all typical of everyone in our society. And when we look back to your question, sir, Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable gentleman's question about the mortality of these people, let us remember that there are still many working people today coming up to retirement who started their working lives as 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds. They are the packers, they are the cleaners, they are the van drivers, they are the heavy manual workers, the care workers. They started work at 15 or 16. And no, I won't, because I want to make my point. The point being that by the time these people are reaching retirement, they are actually worn out. Yep. That they are physically knackered, if I'm allowed to use these words. They are tired, they are exhausted, and they need, in a very old-fashioned sense, a rest. They need to retire. They are not people who, like the honourable gentleman, I suspect, will still be sprightly in his late 60s and 70s with his portfolios and all the rest of it. These people are physically worn out. They've been working since they were children, and they need a rest. And I will give way, and then I'll make my point.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman. Madam Deputy Speaker, he's making a very powerful argument. He's making some very interesting points. But I believe that these points relate to actually the increasing of the state pension age full stop. It's not about the escalation of that. It's not about the bringing it forward or not. This is an argument about whether or not we should be changing the age at which people can claim their state pensions. And that is a separate argument to the one that we're actually debating here.
No, my argument I'm coming to is that it's wrong to treat equally someone who starts work at 15 or 16 with someone who starts their first proper job at 21 or with postgraduate qualifications 23, 24, 25. These people have often been in the labour market doing hard, tough work, tougher than many of us have ever done, manual work, for 10 more years than the likes of us. And my argument is that we should reconstitute a national insurance system that recognises the contributions that those people have made, so that at the very least, anyone who has been in work for, say, 49 years and has paid contributions all that time should be able to take, I shouldn't call it an early pension, but a pension at a more reasonable age. And if that brings about a difference between when they take their pension and their grandchildren who went to the university take their pension, I think that would be fair. I think if we do not start to understand some of these social and employment and class sensitivities, then as we helter-skelter towards higher state pension ages, we start to make mistakes and we leave behind people in great unfairness and injustice, many of whom will never get their pension because they'll be dead before they get their pension. And I think that is not a decent sign of a British pension system that understands how our society is evolving.
Here. Pat Glass.
Thank you. I rise to speak on this matter today on behalf of the hundreds and possibly thousands of women who contacted me on this matter. And I also speak as one woman who's directly and personally affected by the government's changes. So I'm in a position to know and to tell the government what is happening to women of a certain age with regards to pensions. The women who've contacted me have told me that they expected changes in their pension age. They know that we're all living longer, or some of us are living longer, that we need to plan for our retirement better and over a longer period, and that we need to pay more for our pensions, and that there needs to be some equalisation between the access of pensions between men and women. They understand and recognise all of this. But it's the speed at which these changes are being implemented that is causing real anxiety and fear amongst women who are no longer in a position where they're not given time to plan and save for their future. They're telling me that... Yes, certainly.
Thank the Honourable lady for giving way. And I absolutely agree with her. I've been contacted by, again, hundreds and hundreds of women in my constituency who are really, really concerned. And although, yes, we will acknowledge the concessions that have been made by this government, probably because of the pressure that these women have placed on them, it still isn't going to meet the needs of everybody. I've got hundreds, again, of constituents that are still going to be affected, up to nearly £11,000 worse off. And the time to plan just isn't enough to give them a reasonable pension in their old age.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And what is happening today is coming on top of government policies that are directly affecting women and young people more than any other group. This is just one more government policy that will impoverish women. So whatever last-minute fixes the government comes up with, it has got to remain wrong to disproportionately penalise women who happen to be between the ages of 56 and 58, many of whom, as we've heard today, have worked all their working lives. Many of them have held several jobs in order to keep their families. They've paid taxes and they've paid their bills, and quite frankly, they deserve better than this. Many of them, yeah, absolutely.
I thank the member for giving way. Does the member accept that this is one of the few certainties in life that has now been ditched for the sort of woman that you're talking about, women of a certain age, as you quite aptly put it, in that these women have planned out meticulously what their retirement will be, when it will be, what they will then use that pension for, how it will be broken down in terms of housekeeping, in terms of needs for their grandchildren, etc. And that is now all thrown askew by these proposals.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct. And this is causing real fear, not just anxiety, but real fear amongst these women. These women, many of them, have been barred until recently from private and company pension schemes because they had several part-time jobs that they were having to work in several places on very low income and in order to keep their families. And they've now been let down by a government who is simply not giving them due time to change. That's all they're asking for. Just give us due time to be able to plan for this.
I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady. Given what we've just heard from the Honourable Member from Croydon about the increases in longevity and the failure of health to keep up with that, the fact that many of these women will actually not be in the best of health and will be having to look for jobs at a time when their own health is very compromised in some cases and when they're not nearly as fit as they used to be.
And I absolutely agree with those comments. The Chancellor has come here and has told us that he would not balance the books on the backs of the poor abroad. Then why is he prepared to balance the books to a disproportionate degree on the backs of 500,000 women who just happened to be born between the 6th of October 1953 and the 5th of March 1955? Why is it okay to do it to these women? The government needs to listen to the women of this country and accept Labour's amendment so that no woman will have to wait an extra 12 months, more than an extra 12 months, to reach their state pension age.